Good day, and welcome to the Developmental Reading Assessment, or DRA, overview session. This session is about digging into our DRA and being responsive to our student needs, facilitated by Vanessa Lewis and Shirley Barclay. Our session goals are basically to help us explore the why. Why are we using the DRA, and what does it mean for ourselves as teachers and for our students? We'll explore some of the steps in administering the DRA. We'll dig into using the results and also how to access resources. This slide is mainly just for you as a bit of a self-assessment. We all come to the DRA at different levels of expertise and experience, and that is totally okay. Just maybe take a moment to look at the points here and determine, whether you're somebody very new to the DRA process or, working up to a 4, somebody who's quite experienced and is using and utilizing the resource in its full capacity, or somewhere in between. All, again, is completely okay, but what we want to do is to be able to support you based on where you are. So we're going to move into exploring the why and why we administer the DRA. Essentially, the DRA is used to find out or determine what a student's individual strengths and weaknesses are in a number of different areas. The first part of the DRA focuses on reading engagement, or some of those like phonics or decoding pieces related to reading. And then it moves into oral reading fluency, which takes a look at the speed and the accuracy of student reading. And finally, it shifts into the comprehension skills or strategies of our students, which help us understand how students are making meaning or their ability to demonstrate meaning in the passages that they're reading. And once we've administered the assessments, that is where the results become so powerful, because they do help us to customize and inform our instruction for students based on their needs. And the overall why, I guess, in terms of utilizing the DRA is really to help students become enthusiastic and passionate about reading and work towards reading proficiency. Few other points just to share in relation to the why. It's a tool for observing, recording, and evaluating student reading performance. It helps us as teachers by providing us with information to help determine a student's independent reading level. It can help us determine the strengths and needs of each student and as our group or classroom of students. And it can help us then identify what our students need to learn next in order to progress and be able to continue to grow with their reading. It can also be used in a variety of ways. We've got teachers who are using this on a very regular basis in their classrooms, and also can be used kind of at intervals of time, semi-annually, this January midterm check-in, or annually, at the June check-in times, to monitor and document change over time in relation to the students' reading. And it also can be used as frequently as you need to, especially with some of the students that we may have who are struggling readers, in order to have some ongoing supports and targeted supports for progress. So why DRA in SunWest? I'm kind of new to the DRA in SunWest, but I believe we have been utilizing it for quite a number of years. I think it actually has been utilized for grades 1 to 5 since about 2008 in our school division. So it's being done for a number of reasons, as mentioned, but it also, even though our Ministry of Education currently looks at sort of the literacy of students and focuses on reading for our grades 1 to 3 students and requires that data, we as a division have found a lot of value in the DRA, and we work with utilizing the resource in support of our grade 1 through 5 students. That data that you're collecting is very important. It's used to determine the percentage of grade 1 to 5 students in our school division who are reading at grade level, above grade level, or below grade level, and be able to help customize supports for those students. It's tracked by schools at mid-year. So you'll be recording the details of the scores at mid-year and also at the end of the school year, which is a time where we will pull information together at the schools to submit to the division office, and also update in our student data system. And that information will be, collected at that time. So in SunWest, our goal is to use the data to inform instruction in support of student reading levels and continued growth. We'll then dig into unboxing the DRA, and at this point I will invite Shirley to help us dig into the contents of the box.
Okay, good morning. Like Vanessa said, it's really important that we look at the kit. First of all, you need to determine which kit you use. There would be the DRA kit for grades 1 to 3. There's also a DRA kit for grades 4 to 8. And if you look in the storage boxes for each of the kits, you're going to find a wealth of information, a wealth of really important resources for you to use. So the storage box, first of all, would have tab files with folders organized by reading level. The books there's little booklets that the students will be reading within each of those tabs. There's a teacher guide. There's a benchmark assessment books. There's Blackline Masters and CDs that will help you out if you're looking for some support resources. The student reading survey booklets. There's the student assessment folder. There's assessment procedures overview. There's even a clipboard. Some of the kits may still have the timer that's in them as well. The teacher guide provides an overview of the program, all of its components, and the administration guidelines, reporting procedures, how to score the assessments and whatnot. The benchmark assessment books are grade level appropriate books, fiction and nonfiction at various levels of difficulty. The Blackline Masters are for assessing reading and recording, and they can be copied. The teacher observation guide is developed for each benchmark assessment book, and they as well can be copied, and the guides give detailed directions and questions and prompts to be used within the conferences that you're having with your students. The DRA Continuum helps to analyze the student level of performance in 3 main areas. The focus for instruction is for determining what the students need to learn next and helpful learning activities for the students. There's student booklets. The student reading surveys include reading engagement, and there's 3 versions depending on the grades and the levels. And there's all kinds of really important things that are in that guide. So make sure that when you're looking through the kit, make sure that you're having a good look at all the resources that are there. Some schools even have the bridge packs for grades 4 to 8, and they're just extra reading materials for the students to be using.
Yeah, and Shirley, I wasn't trying to make anybody dizzy there, but I was just trying to flip through to some of the things that you were speaking with along the journey, but I will advance through those slides more specifically now.
Okay, so if you turn to the next slide, Vanessa, please. Okay, so within the teacher guide, there's some really important pages that are really important for you to be looking at. And so if you're looking for the level at which you would start testing your students, of course, you're going to be looking at resources that you find in your school from the students from previous tests. But another page to be looking at is page 44 in the DRA K3 kit, and it will give you a level at which you can start doing some testing. And then there's some examples of the fiction and nonfiction continuums on page 24 in their teacher guide. And there's examples of focus of instruction, both fiction and nonfiction, on page 25. Graphic organizers, great graphic organizers on pages 130 to 139. And student reading surveys you'll find them on pages 314, 315 in the Blackline Masters booklet. So those are really important things for you to be looking through as well. Now, the text for each level or comparable books in the 4 to 8 kit are in pages 12 to 21. The nonfiction and fiction continuums are in pages 32 and 33. The examples of the focus of instruction for fiction and nonfiction are page 34, and the reading surveys you'll see are in page SS1 and SS2 for grades 4 and 5, and grades 6 to 8. It's on SS2 and SS3, SS4. So the teacher observation guide, there's 4 really important parts to it, and the first part is the reading engagement, and what that is a questionnaire that will help you to determine how the student feels and what the student knows about reading. And with it, you would observe whether the children is reading titles at their grade level across different genres during DEAR time and library time as well. The oral reading fluency portion of the DRA test is where you're actually sitting beside the student, listening to them reading a portion of the text to you, and you're recording the errors that they make. You're listening for their word attack skills and their oral reading fluency, and you use the test observation guide to analyze this type of error afterwards. The comprehension part, depending on the age of the student, sometimes it will be done orally. If it's with younger students, then it would be done independently with older students. And what it's asking the students to do is just answer some questions so that you can find out how well they understand. And if the student has difficulty with the written responses and the reading charts and graphs and locating information and stuff like that, if you're using nonfiction. And then the most important part, of course, is the teacher analysis, and that is the key. So you use the focus for instruction, you check out the testing guide to help plan for mini lessons, and you use specific areas to help you drive your instruction.
Okay, well, now we'll explore some steps in administering the DRA.
All right, so if the child has been previously tested, like I said, then you look at the levels and the results that are in your school. If the child has not been previously tested, then you review the text at each level and determine which one you think would be a good fit for the child. And so, like I said before, you would refer to the chart on page 44 for the K-3 kit, and for the grades 4 to 8 kit, level 40 would be grade 4, level 50 would be grade 5, and so on. And you can just see the little snippet there of the on page 44. It just sort of gives you a starting point about where you would start. If you think if for the first grade, if you think that they're at grade level, then you would choose levels 3 and 4 and so on. So that's just a little snippet from page 44 in the teacher observation guide. So then you have to select the text is the next step. So at each level, there are a variety of different texts, some nonfiction, some fiction. So what you would do is that you would take the text to the student and the different texts, and you will lay them out, and just without letting them have too much of a look at it, you would have them choose a text that they think would be just perfect for them and that they'd be interested in reading. And it's also important so that attention can be focused primarily on constructing meaning and not so much on the decoding. So that's why it's important for the students to be having some voice in there and some choice. Okay, so once this text has been identified, and then you make sure you have all the materials copied from the Blackline masters and whatnot. The Blackline masters are also available on the DVD that's in the kit. There's directions that are provided to the teacher in the teacher observation guide for each text. They're quite straightforward, very easy to follow. It's important to follow the directions on the teacher observation guide for each selected text, because the directions change from level to level. So that's a really important point to keep in mind. If you require a timer to record the length of the time for the students, make sure that you've got one on hand. I often used my phone if there wasn't a timer available. And when you're administering the DRA, remember that it's this 4-step process. There's the reading engagement part, then there's the one-on-one conference for the oral reading fluency, there's the comprehension portion, and then there's the analysis and the focus for instruction that comes at the end.
Awesome. So this will just highlight step 1 or part 1, which we have been mentioning. Part 1 being focused on reading engagement. And this part of the DRA assessment is completed prior to students having read the text. And then how it is administered depends a little bit on the level of the text being used. It's a one-on-one conversation with students at earlier levels, lower levels, and then as they advance, there becomes a time where the students can do the reading engagement section independently. So with levels A to 24, the reading engagement questions are included on that teacher observation guides. Those teacher observation guides we're mentioning a lot, but they are so key to this and very customized to each of the leveled books or texts. You'll also then just be at that level briefly jotting down the student responses according to the observation guide. With levels 28 to 38, the student can either dictate responses or complete a student reading survey independently prior to the assessment. And then there's some indication on the slide as to what pages, if you're unfamiliar with the resource, where you can go to find those surveys. And levels 40 to 80, so grade 4 to grade 8, students will complete the student reading survey independently. And again, there's a notation on the slide just helping to point you in the direction of the Blackline Master resources for those student reading surveys as needed.
Okay, so then part 2 is the oral reading fluency portion of the DRA assessment. And so what you're doing is that you're recording the student oral reading behaviors. You're looking for miscues, substitutions, rereadings, sounding out, self-corrections, and they're all part of the oral reading in the teacher observation guide. And as Vanessa pointed out, that when they're doing the oral reading, it depends on the level, and that's why it's so important to be looking at the teacher observation guide, but it depends on the level as to whether you're going to be timing these readings or not. Some teachers I've found in the past find it helpful to record the oral reading portion so that they can go back and look at it again later on. Every teacher develops their own way of marking and recording the behavior, the reading behavior on the oral reading portion. The teacher observation or the teacher guide gives some suggestions of how you would mark it, but I mean, whatever works for you. There has even been a bookmark developed, and so you can look in the DRA Kit to see whether there's the bookmark marked there, but you can copy the pages in the teacher observation guide and just have them lying beside you, and that will help with the oral reading portion as well. So sit beside the student while they read the text, watch them closely as they read and their behaviors, and the teacher is a neutral observer and does not intervene. So if the child needs help, simply tell the child the word and record that you did so. And because we have to remember that this is not a time for instruction. We want to know what their oral reading fluency is like. As soon as the child finishes the reading, then quickly count the number of miscues that were not self-corrected and circle the appropriate box in the oral reading % of accuracy in the teacher observation guide. And for levels 14 to 40, after you've timed the reading, then use the words per minute chart to help you to identify what that range is. If the score falls in the shaded area below the independent level, then you should stop the assessment and reassess the student at a lower level text immediately or at another time if that's appropriate.
And then we move into step or part 3, which focuses on comprehension. So those skills and strategies become so important, and it begins with predicting, where students are making predictions about what they're anticipating is going to happen in the text. So just something to note here, for certain levels, students may use the actual book when responding to the text features, prompts, and nonfiction predictions prompts, but the book should be closed then once they make their prediction for those fiction books. So that's just sort of a notation. So when looking at predicting for levels 18 to 38, oh, yes. So you break that down into 18 to 24 initially. And that one, we note and count the number of possible events or actions that the students predict on the teacher observation guide. Whereas with levels 28 to 38, we read aloud the question prompts on page 1 in the student booklet and record the student responses on that same page. But we have to try to, I know it's hard not to, but really try not to give them any additional prompts. You're wanting to really get a good understanding of what the student is able to predict from the text. For the higher levels, the levels 40 through 80, you have some options. You may read aloud the prompts or questions on the prediction page before they complete their predictions independently. But again, you don't want to provide any additional prompts. Basically, students are not to use the book in its entirety to complete the predictions page. They're supposed to be able to make predictions based on what they've read. Does that sound correct, Shirley? Am I explaining that properly?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. And the next step of part 3 goes into looking at responding to text. So again, once again, you're looking at how students respond to the text, and how they do so depends on the level of the text that's being read. Students will be responding to levels 4 to 24 will do so orally, whereas those students responding to levels 28 through 80 will be able to provide written responses. With that, we are also looking at, a few differences between the various levels. For levels 4 through 24, as a student retells the story, underline and record the information included in the story overview on that teacher observation guide. So that teacher observation guide, has the text there, and that you'll be working through scoring on it while the student is speaking. So you'll tally the number of times that you maybe needed to prompt the student. From there, you'll record student responses to the reflecting and making connections interpretation questions for the given text. So that sort of focuses on the retelling pieces and their oral responses. Then we move into the written summary and response for level 28 to 80. In this case, you as a teacher may read aloud the questions and prompts in the student booklet before the student begins, if that will help your student. We don't want students to experience any, anxiety or things with this. So if that's going to support this student, you can do that, but just be, sure not to give any additional prompts or suggestions.
So the next part we're going to talk about is using the DRA results and how we can use those results to inform our instruction. So when you're recording the results, what you need to do is that you need to use that information that you find on the record of oral retelling or oral reading, where you had recorded the miscues, to check the appropriate responses on the analysis of oral reading chart. You calculate the student's fluency rate by converting the student's oral reading time to the number of seconds it took them to read the passage. And then you use the formula that's there to calculate their exact words per minute. The second part would be to complete the Continuum page. So you use the information recorded and or checked on the teacher observation guide. You circle the number of the descriptor that's there that best describes the reader's behaviors and the responses in each row of the continuum. And so we're looking for the independent level of the student. So to find the independent level, the student's oral reading fluency score and the total comprehension score must be at least within the independent range on the continuum. Then you would complete the focus for instruction pages. This is a very important step as it allows the teacher to determine the areas of strength and weaknesses for individual students. Based on the information that you find there, you would plan lessons to support the development of skills that the students are showing weaknesses in or to enhance their strengths.
Awesome. Yeah, that focus on instruction is really what this is all about. This is what really matters, is once we know where the students are at, we can customize our instruction for the students to help with that growth. That's awesome, Shirley. And then we move into recording the results. I think most of you are aware, some of you would have, well, all of you would have received an email from us in relation to the DRA, just reminding us that there's a mid-year check-in time within our school divisions, which is around January. And there's also then some more formal submissions in relation to recording the results that come due around May or June, where schools are required to collect and submit the details of the DRA results to the division office. So as teachers, there's a number of data collection sheets or an electronic spreadsheet which can be used to provide all the details of the DRA. Something just to mention here, for those that maybe aren't quite as familiar with Excel, we have to record the student scores sort of on different pages of the data collection package, depending on the level of text that they've read. So on that spreadsheet, you have to sort of look down to the bottom of the spreadsheet because there'll be a number of different tabs to click on for corresponding to each of the different reading levels. So just sort of drawing your attention to that so that you're looking for that when you're entering the information. Secretaries are also very good at Excel in our schools. So if you need any help with that, I'm sure you can reach out for some support. And basically what we're looking for in June is just the details, the school, the grade, the date, the student identification number, the independent reading level of the student, the reading engagement scores, the oral reading fluency scores, and that comprehension scores. And the spreadsheet really just aligns with the information that you're collecting within or when you're administering the DRA. So then we have to kind of think about, what are we doing with all of this information, what we collect once we collect it? And we can look at it in a lot of different ways. There is, and I've just, we've got this video, sort of a training video by the makers of DRA 2 that you can access online. There's actually quite a series of training videos, but if you're wanting more specific information as to how to move forward, with instruction and to make sense of the data that you've collected, after you've analyzed it, that video may be worth some time spent watching. But basically what you're doing then is looking at, individual student information, but also class information. From that, you as a teacher can glean some ways as to possibly, organize your students in some groupings based on individual needs. You might be able to create some mini lessons or things, maybe utilize our win time in our classrooms in order to help customize and personalize instructions, all with the goal of helping them to become more competent readers and to see some growth. Those teacher guides, I know we've mentioned it a lot, but both at the K-3 and the 4-8 level, they have so much great data in there in terms of how to possibly, look at groupings or look at ideas for informing your instruction. Also, just at the bottom of this slide are just some guidelines for you. Also, you can find that in the teacher guide, but where students are sort of considered to be in relation to their reading level, based on how they are scoring at the various grade levels. So as we've been mentioning, really it's using these results and making meaning of the results and using them to guide our instruction that becomes so important in helping students with their reading. The DRA Kits provide so many resources and strategies for addressing the needs of our students. And again, just a reminder to dig in if it's been a while or if it's new to you, anywhere in between. Even an expert user, it doesn't hurt to go back and just refresh yourself with the kit, in particular the teacher guide, and those observation guides in the Blackline Masters, to help you with some ideas for supporting your students. So just highlighting a few things. These were mentioned as kind of tips and tricks from the past as to really key page numbers in our teacher's guide that you may want to dig into as you're engaged in your classroom planning. In the K-3 edition, there's that comparable book titles sections on page 37 through 39 that becomes really helpful in looking for other types of reading that will support the students, other texts. There's the moving into instruction pieces on pages 120 to 129, what looks at the different levels and describes the differences of what learners are able to demonstrate. There's also that whole section on graphic organizers. Now, I want to say that that is in the Blackline Masters booklet, but I would have to double check that. But that section also becomes really, really important and helpful for students. In levels or grades 4 to 8 edition, that comparable book title section also very key, pages 12 through 21, and that moving into instruction supports. And then, it's one thing to complete these tests and to have the students sort of understand the why and, the purpose for doing it. That's very important. But we don't want to just administer these assessments and then not share the results. Sharing the results becomes so important. We should be sharing the results with our students. Make sure that they understand, the value of why they're doing the work that they're doing and how it's showing them where they're at and help them head in the direction in which they have set some goals. It could be used also with parents, making sure the parents are aware that this is happening and the reasons why. I could do so at tri-conferences, at, student-led conferences, or, any of the touch-based conversations that you might be having with your parents on an ongoing basis, really helping them and even helping them maybe understand where their child is at and, possibly helping them provide them with some ideas of things that they might be able to do at home that would be very targeted to help support the student to advance with their reading goals. We can also connect the results of the DRA and utilize them in supporting individual or personalized goals for our students. Personalized goals are a really integral part of our work with our students, and often in relation to reading, these results can go hand in hand in formulating and adjusting those goals as the student progresses. Finally, students can use the guided reading lessons modeled on the DRA format for self-assessing the quality of their own responses. So helping to give them a little bit of ownership in their learning and help them understand, I guess, where they are and some supports for what they might need to do to continue to grow. And with that, there are a number of different resources which we can access that we're just going to share briefly with you. First up, you will have received an email with some of the SunWest-sized, I guess, kind of quick reference documents that are useful in administering the DRA. If you've lost that email or, maybe have missed it, another good place to land on to look for that information is our resource bank. Our resource bank houses, a multitude of supports for reading, but there is a specific section, which if you key in DRA DRA or developmental reading assessment into the search, or go directly to the link provided at the bottom of the slide. It will guide you through all the links for some of the standardized resources. For example, the DRA Administration Handbook, ideas for finding the reading level, information on eligible students for the reading outcome. It provides a correlation chart to some other assessments. So if you're using like Fontes and Pinnell or something as well, it sort of indicates how DRA scores compare to those other assessments. And it also provides a version of the current year's DRA recording tool. That's that Excel spreadsheet, which we were chatting about. Also, teachers have access to some assessment release time if needed. I know that our teachers are so amazing. I've been able to witness this in action, DRA in action in some classrooms, and I can't say enough about the incredible skill of teachers who have, worked with students to keep the classroom and the focus on reading with all the students happening in different centers or groupings or different ways, while also administering the DRA. But you can speak to your administrators for information about release time. They'll have some information about what that looks like and how it might work within your school. So that's something to keep in mind.
All right, besides all of the resources that Vanessa spoke about, there's lots of other things that you've got in your arsenal of things that can be accessed. So if you look in the resource bank, there's the Reading Strategies Handbook that was developed by SunWest a few years ago. That's a great tool, as is the reading strategies that work. If you just key these into the search box, you'll find them. The SASC Reads document and all the supports that they provide are also a wonderful resource for giving you some support as to how to use the results of DRA to inform your instruction and give you some strategies. Scholastic has a website that has the children's book correlations, and there's so you can click on just scholastic.ca and you're going to find lots of resources there. They've got a book wizard app that you can access that all you have to do is just scan it in and it will give you the level of the book. That if you've got books in your classroom library, all you have to do is just scan it and it'll give the level of the books. Level It Books app is another thing that all you have to do is just take your phone. If you've got the app on your phone, you just scan the barcode on the back of the book and it will give you the level at which the text is. So that will help you with your deciding of resources and whatnot. So there's some on-demand training as Vanessa mentioned, there's some on-demand training, lots of good videos there. We've got a little snippet of some of the videos that are there. So be sure to check that out if you're looking for some tutorials and some on-demand training. There's also, Vanessa found a YouTube video of a little person doing an actual DRA test. So if you want to see it in action, then by all means check that YouTube video out. And we have tons of people in our school division that are there to support you. We've experienced classroom teachers, administrators, consultants, superintendents. If you want to see somebody else doing the DRA in their classroom, if you're new to it or you want a refresher, then contact your school administrator and see if you can make some arrangements to go and see it happen in other schools, because we have some teachers who are they're just experts at providing help and support with the DRA. So make sure that you access all of these resources, the resource bank, these tutorials, and the people within our school division.
And finally, it seems a little strange to ask for questions when we're not in front of a live audience, but just make sure you are very comfortable reaching out if you have any questions. We're all, when we did that self-assessment, potentially in very different stages in relation to our understanding of DRA and our comfort level in administering it, and maybe even in relation to how to utilize the results to inform instruction and support students with progress in relation to their reading. So please just feel to reach out. You can reach out to the resource people that Shirley just mentioned. Certainly direct questions to myself, Vanessa Lewis, by email or phone call. And what we'll try to do is work together collaboratively to support you no matter where you're at on your journey with our developmental reading assessments in SunWest. So this was a quick overview session. We hope that it helps you understand why we're utilizing the DRA, and just really thank you. Thank you so much for your part in using the DRA results to provide responsive instruction to our students within our school division. Couldn't be done without you. So thank you. Take care.